So Gary, Mr.
Yeah.
Brewtubin himself, I mean, godfather of Brewtubin. You set up the whole Brewtubin website. You got everybody going. How did that
Oh,
begin?
I can't take, but maybe 10% of the credit. Honestly, it was the founding fathers of this idea were Everty, Tyler,
Yep.
Kevin Clements, John Mays, myself, um, hockey player, and the one that's contributed the most in the early stages and continues to contribute with the bottle openers was Sean, Maximum ABS. So Sean actually came up with the logo. That's all his hard work there, and that logo is fantastic.
I love that logo. Yeah, I remember Sean. In one of the earlier discussions, we were chatting on Uvu, complete strangers way back when. And I was like, Sean,
Yeah.
how do I get one of those bottle openers? And he said, just email me your address and I'll ship you one. And I was
Yeah,
blown away because 2 weeks later it showed up on my doorstep.
yeah, a very giving individual. I think his life has gotten busy right now, where he hasn't been able to brew a whole lot and be involved with Brewtubers too much right now. But I asked him one day. I was like, "Hey man, can you send just the bottle openers if we get orders from your address?" And he says, "No, I'll just send you the bottle openers." He sent me a whole box of them, and I said, "Make sure you take the money from because um, the the only two people that are actually involved in the money side of it is actually myself and Sean. There's always going to be at least two people in the money because I want accountability. I want it to be transparent. And it doesn't make any money, and I don't want it to because it's a nonprofit.
Mhm.
That is the goal. I'm not trying to make any money with this site. It's basically, I mean, we kind of coined the phrase long before the site came up, Brewtubers. That was, I don't even know who came up with the original name, and it started getting used. But long before I probably even got online, we just, capitalized on it. That's all.
I think that's great. It's a fantastic name to, goes right along with what it is that we're doing. We're brewing,
Yeah.
we're recording it, we're posting it up on YouTube. So brewtubing is
Right.
just the
Yeah, and I
best
mean,
term.
there's probably what a million brewers across the planet that brew out of their home, and probably less than 1% post videos. So
So, how did you get started homebrewing? I mean, where did you really start? Because you got a great electric brewery, partial electric brewery going on that a lot of us
yeah.
were inspired from. Where did you really start from?
Oh God. Without getting too wrapped up in a long story, 2007, I got a Mr. Beer kit for Christmas, as we all did. I think Jake started. Jake CP Unit
Yeah, he's got it up
started
in his
with.
brewery.
He does. To remember where your roots come from, right? So yeah, I asked for a brewing kit for Christmas, and I was like a kid. I remember, and it was 2007. I wasn't a kid, but I felt like a kid because I knew I was getting that for Christmas. Because people ask me, "What do you want for Christmas?" I said, "I want stuff to start brewing beer." And I was expecting something other than the Mr. Beer kit. So I hope that my disappointment in my face when I opened the Mr. Beer kit didn't show up, but I used it. I brewed it, two beers with it, and it came out okay. What really kind of set me off and kind of like spun my wheels, so to speak, is when I cracked that first bottle open and it went, and I'm like, holy shit, I made beer, So
All right, so what were you expecting?
I don't know. I was expecting it to be undrinkable, honestly, and it was drinkable, and I was like, wow, I made beer and it's actually pretty good.
So, what was that first
It was
beer?
pretty good. It was just an ale. Second one was a wheat beer, I think.
Hmm.
And honestly, I was a Bud Light drinker, a Coors Light drinker most of my life. And then I turned into a Sam Adams drinker, and I think the one that it was the Boston Lager that got me kind of into craft brewing. It was purely by accident. We were
Okay.
at a friend's house, we were partying, We were drinking Bud Lights. We ran out of Bud Lights. The stores were closed. We couldn't get any more beer. It was a 6-pack, no, a 12-pack. It was a 12-pack. It was quite full. It was probably a beer or two shy of Sam Adams Boston Lager. So we started drinking that, and the first one, didn't really like it too much. Second one got better. Third one was much better. And then one of the other buddies showed up with another 18-pack of Bud Light, and I took a sip of the Bud Light, and I almost spit it out. I was like, oh my God, this beer sucks. And I went back to the Boston Lager, and I never turned back.
Great. That's a great story. So I'm kind of curious about what it was that you expected for Christmas, was it? Instead of the Mr. Beer kit, what were you hoping for?
So I was expecting that full, the $150 kit from Northern Brewer with the pails and the bottling and the capper.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, I made that first brew. Yeah, sorry, I digressed a little. Anyway, I made that first brew. Came out pretty good, and then I got my orders for Iraq. It was my first appointment, and I really didn't know what to expect. So we did the train up most of early 2008, and I kind of rolled into theater around May 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on a training transition team, so we trained the Iraqi army and kind of embedded with them. So I had a lot of spare time when we weren't doing that. So I started ordering books off of Amazon and ordered Charlie Papazian's book and Extreme Brewing book from Sam, from Dogfish. And I just started reading those because, I had the bug in me, but I couldn't get into the brewing part because I was kind of stuck in an area where, you can't have any alcohol, and supposedly you can't have any sex. And so there's a couple of general orders that you cannot break. And I think making your own beer is part of that general order. So I didn't even attempt that either. So I just started reading books, and then I came home. I just decided to start brewing, more. I got the bigger kit. I did some stovetop stuff for a while, and then I did the all grain, not the partial mash, excuse me. And I think I did one biab. Pardon me. And then I got another deployment. So I went to Iraq again. And in between there, I built a system.
Okay, wait a minute.
First deployment or the second?
Yeah, that would be my question, because I remember seeing your drawings, and when you were building your equipment, and you said, okay, I came up with this on deployment. I was going to ask, okay.
Yeah, it was the second deployment. I had to think about that for a minute. So yeah, in between the first and the second deployment is when I was doing all the stovetop stuff, and yeah, that's what happened. So yeah, I made quite a few beers that way, and I was right into the bug of it, and then I got notified again that I was getting deployed again. So I was like, okay, another year of no drinking beer.
Yay!
So more reading, but I decided at the time, and you get to save a lot of money. And the flip side is you get to save a lot of money. You're not spending any money on anything. I mean, you're paying for all your food. They're paying for, obviously for you to stay, and they pay your full base salary plus your housing allowance, which you're not really using it. So I get the bank quite a bit of money. So I said, you know what, I'm going to set aside about $2,000-$3,000 to build a system. And then I just started doing drawings in my spare time and watching. Honest to God, I watched a lot of YouTube videos back then. I wasn't posting anything because the internet was horrible. It was probably the equivalent of a 56K modem at best.
Yeah.
So what I used to do is just kind of set up my downloads, like I even watch Greg too. And I think Jake, I watched a couple of his, and I don't think SJ was putting videos up. He may have been. So I would queue them up and go to sleep, and by the time I woke up the next morning, they were actually downloaded so I could play them. So that's why I used to queue up the videos and let them download all night, because it would literally take all night to download.
Mm-hmm. So who else were you watching back then? So we got a little bit of Craig Tube, Jake CPU Nut. Who else was back then?
Bobby from New Jersey, definitely.
Hmm.
I can't think of everybody, to be honest with you, but definitely Bobby was in there quite a few times.
Yeah.
So my inspirations were really my own kind of like curiosity, but definitely watching folks on YouTube got me interested in, one, building a system, and two, starting to post videos about it. So I figured my first video would be of me building that system that I designed, kind of concept designed, and while I was in Iraq. The other thing was, once I got a firm design in place and something in my head, I actually started ordering things from Iraq and having them sent to my house. So everything was waiting for me in the garage when I got home. So it was kind of my incentive to get to the end.
Nice. There's always that something that you need to look forward to, and that's awesome. How did you put the control panel together? Did you have somebody help you out with that, or did you just figure it out yourself?
No. Before I became a nurse, I was an electromechanical engineer. So I used to design and build automation. So that's really, it's very easy. That stuff is very easy for me. Most of that, is off the shelf. So you just got to put it all together. But the original video, I say email me if you have any questions. And folks have emailed me and Hockey Player was one of them. I helped him design his.
Yeah.
And he told me what he wanted, so I drew up the wiring diagram and sent it to him. So, and I'd be willing to do that for anybody.
That's very nice. I was really close to doing that, actually, because there was a point where you were talking about in your equipment overview video, you sort of switched out a couple components because you didn't have necessarily the right ones. I don't know if it was like you put together two 110s or whatever because you didn't have a 220 or something like that. I don't remember. It was a solid state relay or something. And so back then I was totally confused before this thing was built. And then I ran across a different site that sort of went through everything. So that's how I...
Yeah, and the electricbrewery.com is awesome. It's awesome stuff. But I was working on a budget. I wanted to build this thing, from nuts to bolts and keep it under $3,000. And I think it cost me $23 and some change.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. How long did it take you, start to finish?
To put the... Oh, God. I mean, I had...
Ordering
I had
parts.
A month's worth of... Well, I mean, I don't really count that because I did all that from Iraq. So that stuff was all waiting for me when I got home.
I do count that. I do count.
Well, it's so hard it's so hard then to come up with a time because I really had the benefit of a ton of free time, and I did a lot of thinking, and I did a lot of searching the internet for the best prices, and then putting those in that order sheet so that folks could benefit from my research. I don't know if that's. I mean, it's 3 or 4 years removed now, so all of those prices may have changed, but at the time. Anyway, so I did put a lot of time and effort into research. A lot of it was just to try to find the cheapest price. The only thing I contemplated, and I've done welding before, and I've done stainless steel welding. As a electromechanical engineer, you're doing the electrical side and you're doing the mechanical side. So some of the smaller companies I worked for, you really had to do a lot of stuff. You had to get on the Bridgeport. You had to, whittle down your own parts sometimes if it didn't fit per the drawing, or you had to weld something. So you kind of got like a jack of all trades and master of none. So I considered buying a TIG welder and just welding all the pots myself. And then I thought, well, how much welding am I going to do after the fact? So I decided to farm out the welding part. That actually took the longest. I had the system built and I was waiting for the HLT for almost 3 weeks for the bozos to weld all the nuts on. So, the heating element nuts and all the fittings. So that was, in hindsight, I should have just bought the welder and then sold it on Craigslist or something.
I remember those videos. I was watching you back then, and I remember you waiting to get that back. So I was pretty excited.
Yeah.
Let's see when Gary gets back.
Yeah. I remember your very, very first, you were emailing me back then. You weren't even on YouTube. I found your story very interesting and humbling, because I was like, wow, this guy is asking me for advice. I was like, it's humbling. This whole thing is humbling, honestly. It really is.
Yeah, it's a great community of just a
Yeah.
wealth of knowledge of people with various backgrounds and interest and
Yeah.
expertise. Yeah. So you started off with a Mr. Beer Kit. You did brew in a bag.
Yeah.
You did stovetop stuff, partial mashes,
Yeah.
things like that, and then you
Yeah.
spent a lot of time building this system. And
Yeah. And
are
I
you
did some
content?
all grain batches. I did some all grain batches before the system. I used to probably, honestly, between the deployment, I probably did maybe 4 batches before I get deployed on all grain, using the buckets and using gravity and hauling water. And I was fully prepared to continue to do that had I not been deployed, and then had the extra resources financially to build the system.
So are you content with your system today?
Yeah. I wasn't completely with the cooler. Although the cooler had its great benefits. The benefits were that it held temp. I only needed to recirculate for 20 minutes towards the end of the mash. But it wasn't enough to do bigger batches, higher gravity batches. You had to thicken the mash down, so it changed everything around. So I ended up going with a 15-gallon stainless steel mash tun. Problem is that with those bigger things, you have more waste, more dead space, more thermal loss. So, it kind of changed everything. And I've been kind of relearning my system again. So I almost feel like a newbie brewing on that again. I've been missing my numbers a little bit. I'm getting closer. But my brewhouse efficiency went down, which is okay. I don't really care about that. And my mash efficiency went down. Question mark on that, probably because I'm fly sparging instead of batch sparging. So, I guess I have to really figure out, do I want to continue to fly sparge? Do I want to batch sparge? Settle on one, and then tweak the numbers until I hit, so I'm able to hit my numbers on a regular basis. That's what I'm down to right now.
Okay. So after your experience with the Sam Adams at that party, where did you go to next? What was like your go-to beers?
It was more, like the Oktoberfest. It was more of the Sam Adams products, because I really didn't know back then what else was out there. And then I pretty much kind of, evolved into, I got into wheat beers for a while, and the fruit beers, and, that kind of, I still like them, but I kind of grew out of that phase, and then I started experimenting with the darker beers and trying to get to know those. And I think I've come full circle. Now I'm trying to brew the perfect, lager pilsner. I think I'm coming around to brewing those. I think those, to me, are really a test of your brewing capacity, or brewing process, I should say. If you can, and I still haven't, in my mind, I haven't nailed it. I've come close a couple of times, but lately I've been failing horribly in the Pilsner category. So I'm not sure. The only thing that's really changed for me is the water. I'm going to have to go back to that, because I've moved to Massachusetts. I'm on city water here like I was in Maine, but I had the Maine water tested. It was absolutely great Pilsner brewing water. I don't really know what I'm dealing with here. So that's probably what it is, and I'm going to test the water. And that's something Paul and I were talking about when we were at SJ's, and he told I was going to buy the water testing kit from the Northern Brewer. It's like $220 or something like that. And he told me to, said, hey, don't buy that one, just buy a pool kit. He said, buy a pool water testing kit. They're much cheaper, and they pretty much do the same thing. And I was like, I'm going to look into that.
Okay.
So, yeah. Is that what you have?
No, this is the Mott, the Brewin water tester that I got from More Beer. Just arrived today, actually. So looking to invest some time into that.
Right. So what I was going to do is actually do some. I was going to do a YouTube video on it, and I actually bought the filters already for my filter system. I've got a standard filter, a charcoal filter, And what I was going to do is test the water and do a YouTube video with testing the water straight out of the tap, testing it with a regular filter, and then testing it with a charcoal filter. And then see what the differences are and what changed, so that folks may have an idea if they haven't tested their water and they decide to use a charcoal filter, what you're going to really kind of end up with for water. So that was probably not my next video, but the one after.
Nice. No, do that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've only got a charcoal filter in the back, so I'm only looking to filter out the chlorine, basically. So everything else will make it into the beer, and then I run right now only specifically on pH. So you're content with your system. Is there any other upgrades that you want to do in the near future, far future?
No, the biggest project that I have in front of me is to finish up the downstairs. I really wanted to do that this year, but a couple of things got in the way. Work, for one, I've been working a lot. Two, in June, I had a motorcycle accident and I broke 8 ribs and punctured a lung, and I was in the ICU for 2 days. So that put me out of commission for a while.
Everything is better now?
Yeah, I was fine. I had all my gear on, so it was a compression fracture on the left side of my rib cage, and I was miserable for 3 weeks. The first 5 days, I could barely move. But
You're such a wuss.
Yeah. I actually drove the motorcycle home. I mean, when I wrecked it, it pretty much landed on me and broke a few things that was still drivable. I drove the damn thing home, and
Jesus.
by the time I got home, I was completely out of breath because my lung was filling up with blood. I was like, okay, this is not good. I got to go to the hospital. I knew I broke rib, but I didn't know it was ribs. Yeah.
Wow. So the downstairs is going to be the crib? The brew crib, or what?
Yeah, so I hate to call it that, but it's good. Well, what I call it, the man cave. I hate to call it that. I should change that. So I'm not going to call it the man cave, but it's going to be somewhat similar to that. There's actually going to be a bar down there. I have the two fridges I use for fermentation. I'm probably going to keep one for fermentation, and the other one is going to be for a couple of the corny kegs, and then I'll have my kegerator. So I'll have at least 4 taps going.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in the garage, so on the opposite side of the wall is the actual wall where the taps are going to be. So I'm just going to use this probably, I don't know, what's that, 9-inch stainless steel tube, polished tube. I'm going to probably get 3 or 4 foot section, and then get the caps that go on the end of it. And that is going to be what I'm going to mount the brew handles to.
Oh yeah.
So the hoses are going to come through the back of the tube, and you won't even see them. And it's going to be this stainless steel tube with tap handles on it against cultured stone wall. So it'll look pretty fantastic. It's just studs down there now. I've been running the extra wiring, and then I have to frame out the ceiling part, because the ceiling is just insulation. And it's forced hot air, so I have all the ducts to work around. It's going to be a real pain in the ass. A lot of work.
Yeah.
So, but on that, on the end where the 2 windows are, I'm going to put a glass sliding door, and that's actually going to be my fermentation room, which the conical will go in there, and my other fermenters, and then that way I can keep that room temperature controlled without having to freeze out the house or use a refrigerator, because I can chill that room down or heat it up in winter, and I'm not, it's just a small space. So plus the glass sliding doors will be a nice addition to the bar, where you can look in and actually see the fermenter and whatever's going on in the fermentation room. So
to be a dedicated fermentation
small.
Chamber.
Yeah, pretty much. A walk-in fermentation chamber is what it's going to end up being.
So I remember, like, in your earlier videos, you had built a fermentation sort of chamber using the thick insulation.
Worked well, by the way. Yeah, worked very well.
And
I think I called it the mother of all fermentation chambers or something like that.
That no longer exists?
So I tore that down when I moved out of the house, because it wouldn't. Because I built that in that room, which it was my little workshop. it wasn't coming back through the door in one piece. So I actually had to tear it apart to get it out of there. But I had already purchased them, or I didn't purchase them, they were given to me. I got those 2 medical fridges. So I had already converted those. I didn't need it anymore. So it was just taking up space. It was actually, I was using it for my carboy storage when I wasn't using the carboys. So I ended up just tearing it apart. But at the time, it worked wonderful. And for those of you that's your only option, I highly recommend it. It's a cheap project, and it's good for keeping your fermentation, rock solid.
So you're brewing the Pilsners, and that's what you entered into the SJ Pour Challenge. How do you feel about that beer?
Okay, so that beer was kind of an epic fail, and it started at the beginning. I normally used Y yeast, Czech yeast, on that brew. Where I live now, Y yeast, the only Y yeast I can get is about a 2-hour drive. Everybody in this area uses White Labs. And so I said, okay, I'll get the equivalent White Labs yeast. And I bought 2 vials. And I was kind of pressed for time. I knew I had to brew this Pilsner pretty quick because obviously Pilsners take longer, and I needed to get them mellowed out before I got them into the contest and being judged. So I didn't do a starter, I double pitched. 36 hours later, I still had no fermentation. It was dead in the water. I was bullshit. I ended up driving 2 hours to go find the white yeast, Czech yeast. I bought 2 slap packs. I brought them back, just direct pitched them right over that 36-hour wort that had been sitting in there. And the next morning I was in full fermentation. So there was nothing wrong with the wort itself. I didn't kill off any yeast with whatever it was I did. It was the yeast. So I was right there. That's in normal beer, that wouldn't have mattered one bit because you would have covered down on it with, malt flavor or yeast. I'm not sorry, yeast, but hop flavor or just grain bill in general. Pilsners are light. You can't hide behind any errors. So when I sampled it, when it came out, you got to when Pilsners or lagers first come out and you do the sample, you have to be careful because they kind of have almost an ale-like, they still have a lot of yeast profile left in them. They haven't mellowed yet. So they can still taste pretty good. You have to wait till the final product to make your judgment. And when I tested it, it felt like it was going the right way. But after all of that flavor fell off, I was left with a little bit of an off flavor. Some people called it grape. And I think I picked up a little bit of grape. But the other factor is that it was the first time I used the beer gun and I undercarbonated. The third thing that happened was, it's just a comedy of errors. Well, I'll show you with the camera. So I stack the beers. I'm just pointing the camera over here. Yeah, I stack the beer bottles when I'm done with them by the sink like this. As you can see, some have labels on them and some don't. So what I did was, I hadn't washed them yet. And only the ones that were up there were the ones that had no labels on them. Because some of the beers I don't label, I just put something on the beer cap.
Okay.
My wife, I just rinsed them. My wife thought they were already sanitized and they were drying. She stuck them in a 12-pack and put them downstairs with all my clean bottles. When at bottling day, I just took those bottles and stuck them in the star sand. I didn't check them. So some of the bottles end up having some residual beer left over from previous batches. I don't even know what they were. So some of my beer bottles got sent out infected.
Oh man.
After all of that. So yeah, that was a complete epic fail for me.
That is so not the picture that I have for you. MaineBrewGuy, got a Brewtubers, and you do an epic fail like that. That's just...
Yeah, so it goes to show you there's nobody's immune to failure.
Humility in a bottle.
Yeah, that's right. I could just picture somebody taking popping the cap on it and having no hiss, pouring it in a glass, having no head, and then tasting and going, what the fuck is this?
You tried.
Oh well. It is what it is.
Yeah. And did you enjoy the
But
rest of it?
Paul, I ended up, I brewed a double batch. I ended up throwing out the other batch. That's all
Oh.
that was.
Okay. That's bad.
Although a few people that rated it, probably the ones that did not get an infected bottle, rated it fairly decent. They still came up with that grape hop flavor, and that's the same thing I kind of was getting. I wasn't sure if I was nailing grape or something else, but there was something there that I couldn't really put my finger on that was never there before, and that's one of the things I'm trying to work out.
Okay. So have you brewed since then, and what have you brewed? What's in the fermenters?
Well,
What's
the
in the
Oktoberfest.
fermenters? Okay.
The only thing in the fermenter right now is the SJ Pour one, and actually it's downstairs. I was getting ready to do a secondary when you called and said, I'm ready, so
Okay.
I'll probably transfer this to secondary right after we get off the phone here. And that's the New Zealand Black IPA.
All right. Okay. So you got one of those. SJ has one of those, and then there was a third one. Did Joe take that one?
Actually 4. So Larmo brewed his own batch, so he's got a full 5-gallon batch.
Okay.
SJ and I and Joe and Paul brewed a double batch in SJ system, and we split that 3 ways. So I don't have a full 5 gallons. I have probably like 3.5,
Okay.
and then I think there's 3 and 3 in the other ones. So all right, yeah, almost 10 gallons. So.
And it seemed like there was a lot of hands that were going into that recipe, according to the videos.
Yeah. So we all kind of we split up the hops at 10-minute additions, and we did continuous hopping over 10 minutes, and they were all New Zealand hops. So we each had our own cup, and we had our own time to drop. So that was kind of fun. Paul was so discombobulated though, because we're doing everything in the English standard system, I guess, and of course everybody else is using metric in the world, which
ounces
we tried that
and
back
gallons instead of
Yeah.
grams and liters.
I think it's ridiculous. I think we should have gone to the metric system long ago. In fact, they tried it in school when I was in school for a year. They said, that's it, we're done with the standard system, we're switching to metric. And that whole school year, we used the metric system. And I found it very easy to use. And then the next year, we were right back in the standard system. I don't know what happened. And then we've never looked back. We've stayed in the standard system. And unfortunately, even some of the cars, even American-made cars, of course, I say American-made, they're probably made in Mexico and other places, which is not a problem for me. The problem is that when you go to work on the car, some of it's metric and some of it's standard. So you have to own two toolkits to work on your car.
Yeah.
So I like the metric system, but I still use the standard system. And we were using the standard system that day, and Paul was having great difficulty doing the conversions because we were hungover and we were still drinking.
It looked like a fantastic time. I mean, the pours came all out, and with the dinner and everything. The videos looked awesome.
Oh yeah. puts on a wonderful spread. She is a lovely lady. I can't say enough about the whole family. Bailey and his daughter. I tried to keep her off the camera as much as I could. I know she doesn't like to get on the camera, but some of the shots were so good I couldn't, and she kind of showed up in them a few times, and I tried to keep that to a minimum. Bailey, if you're watching this, I'm sorry.
Great. So that was like the first sort of big Brewtubers meetup, and I understand that we're going to try and do a few more, like next year something in the UK, 2 years from now something in New Zealand, 3 years from now maybe Australia or Canada. Sam, we're thinking about you. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. So we were talking about that, and we were also thinking that maybe a repeat in York as well. And we were trying to think of a name. I just came up with Home Brewvana, but I mean that's not really original. I was hoping somebody could come up with something better. But New Zealand is on my bucket list as well as my wife's bucket list. So New Zealand's in our future. And I'll probably try to schedule it around the Brewfest there. and Paul and I talked about it. So
Beer Vanna.
maybe
right?
not next year, because next year is Germany for us.
Nice.
This year is Belize. So
Okay.
then after that, I think it's Ireland. So, you know, every year we're going to go to some other place. So, you know, we may land in London, and maybe I can meet up with Harry Brew 69 and some of those folks over there in the UK before we, you know, take our trek up to Ireland.
Yeah, I would definitely like to go up and meet Harry and Tom and Jonah and Brewmaster Ben and Hansworth.
Yeah,
Homer.
Brewmaster Ben.
It's a bunch of them.
Yeah.
We got to get to them
Yeah, those
too,
guys,
doing in the brew house. We need to get you guys in the brew house. And
Yeah, I'd like to see those interviews. Yeah, absolutely. Did you? You already did Harry, but yeah,
And Tom.
definitely Brewmaster Ben and those folks. Yes, that's right, Tom. Yeah.
Talk about how much do you want to talk about Brewtubers?
And,
Let's talk about that a little bit, because you know the website is great. The forums are there for everybody to use. Information such as this series is on there, and then hopefully more and more people will contribute sort of their how-tos and things like that. So the site will continue to grow and blossom. But there is a problem with the spam, and is there any plans for trying to fix that?
Yeah. So I'm going to end up paying for it out of pocket again, but I'm probably going to end up having the whole site redesigned. I may try to do some of it myself, but then I may have to solicit some professional help and obviously pay to get it tweaked. So the site that I'm working on is being built offline. And it's going to be, you know, the new, we're operating at old Joomla. And because of the way the registration works, we're using a third-party process to link the front-end registration to the forum registration.
Right.
And if I upgrade anything right now, that link is going to be broken. So I'm kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. So that's why the whole new process, the whole new system is going to be Joomla 3.33, and it's going to be the upgraded, most likely an upgraded bulletin board system that's completely integrated a little better, so that I can install some better software and use, you know, some methods that are going to completely eliminate spammers. So that's in the works. Time is the issue, and that's why I was soliciting help from Paul or whoever else out there wants to be part of the Brewtuber movement and try to get that site, you know,
nice.
updated and basically secure, more secure. Keep the spammers out of it. Right now, we're doing this. We're some of the things in place reduce the amount of spamming, but then we have to go in and kind of manually remove the spamming, and that's what Technician Brewery and myself have been doing in the background. Is we just go in daily and we prune out the spam. That's basically what we do. So if you go in there and you see spam, if you go in there 6-7 hours later, the spam is usually gone because we've pruned it out. So
Okay.
it's like mowing the lawn. We have to go in there and just weed it out every now and then. So the flip side of it too is anybody that wants to sell their wares, and that includes folks that already have their sites established, you're welcome to put them on Brewtuber's shopping cart. Just let me know what you want, and we can make sure that it's going to your PayPal. And we don't need anything other than maybe a yearly donation if you feel the need to, just to help support the site. Like I said, I don't want it to make any money, because then I gotta file taxes on the damn thing. So the idea is never for it to make money.
Right.
And those of you who want to buy the shirts and stuff, please do. Just whatever little profit that we're getting from that goes right to the proceeds to support the site, i.e. pay for the upgrades and the hosting service. That's pretty much all our expenses. And we contribute to you know, the challenges when we can. Like fortunately, there was about $200 left over. You don't really have to claim anything in the U.S. under 500. Doesn't matter. There was about $260 in the account, just so everybody knows. We gave $200 to support the challenge.
Right, you
That's
were
why
gold
we got
sponsors for the SJ4 Challenge.
Gold sponsors. So us Brewtubers supported that. It wasn't me. That came out of the PayPal account that belongs to Brewtubers.
Nice.
Just so you know.
Yep. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, so thanks to everybody. Yeah.
any PHP developers out there?
Yeah.
More than welcome.
Hey,
Contact Gary.
please
and we'll
help.
Get things
help.
started.
You'll get free swag. I don't know. That's all I have to offer you.
What I want is one of those work shirts. That's definitely one of those available.
Well, the thing is that I haven't been selling too much of these, so I was kind of waiting for me to sell more of these so that I could place another order for these and the work shirts at the same time. If I order just the work shirts now, it's going to cost us more. So that's kind of why I've been waiting.
Come on, guys, buy more of these shirts. We want the work shirts.
Hey, they're pretty cool. They're pretty cool. Remember, they run big. This is actually a medium, and it fits me, and I normally wear a large. So those of you that who normally wear one size, just order one size down, and it'll fit you perfect. Promise.
Yeah, they are American sizes. Keep that in mind. Yes.
Yes, we are large and in charge in America. We eat lots of food.
What are your ambitions as a home brewer moving forward? I mean, you got the downstairs. You're going to do the built-in fermentation chamber. Do you have any higher ambitions? Higher calling?
There was a time where I felt like I wanted to take this to the next level and open a brewery. And I actually had a chance to. I would have to move to New Jersey. Actually, it was my commanding officer that also was into brewing. And he found a spot in pretty much an area that's kind of underutilized as far as the market's concerned in microbrew. So it's really been a good area to open up. It would have required me to take a complete leap of faith in the middle of nursing school, which I wasn't really done with. Drop everything, move to New Jersey, and then open a brewery. It's a little bit too much risk, so I decided not to do it. Now that I've started nursing, I've been a year and a half in the ER now, I really enjoy it. I enjoy it so much that I probably will continue on and get my nurse practitioner. So that's kind of my goals, to keep brewing as a hobby and not turn it into a job.
Mm-hmm. I think that's actually really nice. I mean, as a home brewer, you have to sort of reach way deep down in your soul and figure out how far do I want to take this, because some people through life, you go through different chapters and you say, you latch on to things and you learn things and you say, well, actually I could do that for a living. Forget about what I'm doing now. I could do that for a living. Same thing with home brewing. My current job is fantastic, provides, pays the bills. But then you get into this and it's addictive as hell, and then you get into it and it's like, yeah, I could do that too. So what would it take? And then you realize, oh, it's a little bit bigger undertaking than you really estimated.
Yeah, especially those of you like yourself, Tony, that have young families. I mean, you're going to be working 16-hour days, 7 days a week. You're going to be really involved in the early stages, and you're going to be pouring your heart and soul into this. Ask Jake. He will tell you. It detracts from family life. It detracts from quality time that you can spend with your kids while they're growing up. So there's a lot of folks out there that have children. They really need to think about that before they jump into opening a brewery. What kind of impact is this going to have on my family? Long term, it may give you more money so that you can send them to college, but some of my fondest memories are childhood memories. Family.
Yeah.
So you want to remember that. Take that into consideration.
Yeah. So, what is your final analysis so far before the international leg of the STA Pour Challenge? How was your experience with that, other than the beer cock-up?
Oh yeah, my beer was horrible, but the challenge itself I thought was I think it was pretty balanced. We had the smallest hub. We had a lot of dropouts, and so I think we only had like 9 beers, maybe 8. I don't know. It was under 10. Yeah. So we probably had the smallest hub. So we didn't do we didn't throw out the highs and lows on the scoring. So didn't take the outliers out. Everyone else, they took the outliers out of the scoring process. So, which I think is a great idea. Statistically, you want to pull the outliers out anyway. It gives you a better average. Gives you that better bell curve. And a truer representation, and it takes any bias out of there too, because your outliers are typically biased, not necessarily towards the person, but towards the beer itself. It's just not their style. So I found that to be pretty good. We didn't do the outliers in the northeast region, and I don't really think that affected us too much. I think it may have hurt Dan Desolent the most. He had the Highwaymen. It was a so Dan brewed a Pearl that I don't think. I mean, he probably wasn't the one that. If we had taken the outliers out, he would have probably benefited more by that. Because
and what's a Pearl?
He was getting
What's a Pearl?
Pearl is basically a beer that doesn't use any hops. It uses a lot of ingredients, sort of in the category of a Gruit, but Gruits have some other like heather tips and things of that nature that aren't in a Pearl. Pearl were brewed, I believe Pearls were brewed before Gruits with similar type of adjuncts that weren't hops, basically. And
okay.
My God, it was, if you consider that there were no hops in this beer, it was fantastic. So anyway, he didn't get the benefits of removing the outliers. So I don't think he did as well because of that. But I think if he was in a larger market, he would have done better. It was a pretty good beer. But I don't want to take away from the third place winner either. That was a great beer. I just think that his beer wasn't graded well because people just didn't know what to expect and how to grade it. And Dan, I want to say props to you for going out on a limb and brewing this beer. I wish everybody could get to try it because it's pretty special.
So, what are you going to be brewing up in the near future? What are you tackling?
So we're having it's going to be a double brew session. It's probably going to be, it's either going to be a Baltic porter, a Baltic chocolate cherry porter.
So what would be your approach on the chocolate and cherries on that one?
Well, we were considering dried cherries instead. Also putting dried cherries in the corny keg on bottling day, leaving them in there as a tertiary. So, I mean, cherries getting in there all along the way. Chocolate, we would add chocolate the way you normally add chocolate. If you want to add some dark chocolate or some baker's chocolate in there, along with chocolate malts, whatever. But maybe a vanilla bean, just to carry the cherries a little bit. I think vanilla carries cherry for some reason. Don't know the science behind it, but I feel that as long as you don't overpower the vanilla, it kind of supports the flavor of cherry and chocolate. So
now I'm hungry.
Right? Doesn't it sound so good?
Yeah.
Sometimes those things in your head, sometimes those things in your head translate well, but then you brew a beer and you go, "What's happening?" So that's why I think instead of brewing a standard porter, I was going to use a Baltic porter. That way the lager yeast can keep the esters down to a minimum to let the cherries and the chocolate shine through. Only because I think cherries and chocolate are some of those things that tend to get overpowered by yeast esters. So that was why I decided Baltic instead of a standard porter.
Makes sense.
So Tyler, I apologize, but I remember when you sent me a beer, a bunch of them. This was one of them. This is your Oktoberfest. Long story, I'll do a video on this later, but I found a bunch of beers. Oh, good hiss. So this is 18-month-old Oktoberfest.
Wow.
From you, Tyler.
Beautiful. I remember that label.
Had a hell of a hiss on it. It's probably because it's been sitting around for 18 months. It probably really finished off nicely.
Nice glass.
Right? Look at that. Look at that beauty. Crystal clear. Nice October Marzen type beer.
It's got a really nice slight reddish hue to it towards the bottom.
Oh yeah.
Sort of like,
No, it's a nice copper color. Yeah, I don't know if this camera is doing it justice, but.
how is it held
Oh,
up?
fantastic. Beautiful. One thing about lagers, guys, you don't have to worry about age. They just age nicely. It's like wine. It's beautiful.
Great. Can you pass that over
Thanks,
to me,
Tyler.
please?
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks. Oh, sorry. That's
There it is. Now, if you time that right, that's going to look pretty cool.
So what do you do when you're offline? I mean, what are you doing when you're not brewing or at work nursing? What do you like to do?
Workout. Try to stay in shape. I mean, I kind of have to for the Army. That's because I'm still in the reserves. So we just had a PT test this last weekend. So you know, pass these things twice a year. Sit-ups, push-ups, 2-mile run, all in a compressed time frame. So you gotta kind of stay in shape for that. You don't have to be crazy about it, but you know, I am 51, so I gotta try to maintain a physical form that isn't round.
Well, you're definitely one of the most fit 51-year-olds that I know. Sure.
Oh, well, thank you. I think the camera does me justice. So I've just been picking up a lot of extra shifts at work, and I just work my ass off, study, a lot of self-studying, schoolwork, and certifications like certified emergency room nurse, and pediatric nurse. So just these certifications that go on the end of your license, that just give you more clout and sometimes more money. So
Right.
self-studying for those. That's all I do in my spare time, and work around the house. Staining the deck, seal coating the driveway, painting the cars. I just painted my truck and my wife's car and did some body work on them.
Eventually, you get down to the priority of the brew, man
That
cave,
is
the brew
it.
cave.
I actually have, here's how crazy I am. I made my own to-do list. So,
Nice.
for around the house before my wife gets home. So I'm just checking off things on the to-do list. And the last one is the building the brew house. But she is going to help me with that because she said that she'd like to help me. So I think I get her involved in that. Maybe I can work her into enjoying some of the other fruits of my labor. So I've made her wine, and I actually made champagne for her. So
Oh,
see how that
very
turns out.
interesting. Did you make a video about that?
I didn't. Shameful, I know. So the traditional way to make champagne, bored hell out of everybody, is you basically use a white wine base, put a champagne yeast. You don't kill off the yeast. You bottle it in a champagne bottle, and then you can back sweeten it a little, cork it, and then you lay it on its side in a rack, and you let it continue, not cork it, cap it with it's like a beer cap. I think it is a beer cap. Special capper though. Cap it, you lay it on its side, and you let it bottle condition a lot because you're really going to pressurize the heck out of this. But all that yeast sediment, what you do is you rotate the bottle like a 1/4 inch every month or so. And then you actually, after 6 months or so, you tip the bottles upside down and you leave them there for a month or so, and you let all that yeast sediment build into the bottom of the neck. And then you make a brine solution, which is basically ice, water, and salt, like you're going to make ice cream. And you stick the neck of the champagne bottle in that brine. You freeze the yeast plug, pop the cap, and you have to be very ready with the actual champagne cap and cage. And you watch the pressure push that yeast plug out. And as soon as it pops out, you cap it and you cage it. That's how the traditional way to make champagne. I did not do that. I did not do that. I did it a different way.
So how did you do your champagne?
All right, so I still use the white wine base. I use the Chardonnay base. I use a wine yeast to leave a little bit more residual sweetness because my wife tends to turn, my cat's going crazy, tends to lean towards Proseccos and things that are a little sweeter and carbonated. So with that in mind, you chose a champagne yeast that kind of leaves a little residual sugar behind. And then put it in a secondary like you normally would, but I didn't add the potassium sorbate to kill the yeast off. And I didn't degas it. I just used a clarifying agent, clarified it down, and then moved it into a tertiary, which is a corny keg, and I pressurized the keg at 35 or as high as it would go, probably 40 psi. I mean, I cranked it right up, left it there for about a week. And then when bottling day, you have to be very creative with this because there's so much pressure in there. Bled off all the pressure and used the Blickman bottling gun, and I put in 3, or was it 3 or 5? It was 5 carbonation tablets in each bottle, and then I pressure filled the already carbonated champagne into that, and then capped it and caged it. So it went in with a certain amount of pressure, probably not the same amount of pressure as you could get with a champagne, because it's an enormous amount of pressure. I don't even know what the PSI is, but so hopefully, I haven't tried one yet. Hopefully, the 5 additional carbonation tablets and the additional live yeast that are in there are enough to build that champagne-like pressure.
Right. Now, okay, so Mike, I got a question. When you talk about tablets, I understand there's 2 different types of additions that you can do. I've always done the Cooper drops, but that's not what you've done. You use a different type of tabs.
Yeah, those little tablets are basically sucrose, which is the one that doesn't leave any sugar flavor behind, any sweetness. I don't know. It's good. It's like corn sugar, I think.
What was the name of those? What's the brand on those? Are those mutton tabs?
Yeah, I think they are mutton tabs.
Okay, so the mutton tabs, not the... Because you definitely... Because 5 of the Cooper's carbonation drops, that seems like a little bit excessive. Those are pretty big compared to those tabs.
No, these are little tiny things. They look like small little... they look like, small Advils. They're not very big.
I think a lot of it is very interesting. I've never seen anybody actually, like on Homebrew Wednesdays or in the brewing community, make champagne. So I think a lot of people
I was gonna record it, but I don't know. I just when the whole process started, I didn't record it, and then in bottling day, I may have gotten some footage of it, and I don't even know where it is. I think I may have deleted it by accident when I was clearing my camera memory out to go to SJ's. So I basically don't have any worthy footage to put anything together.
Okay.
I'm sure I'll make champagne again because my wife, that's like her favorite thing to drink. So I will probably make more, and I will try to do a video of that. Depending on how this comes out, it's going to be, this is basically a blind experiment. Reading books like you do and reading articles on how to make champagne is one thing. Actually making it is something else. And then, oh, by the way, completely figuring out a different way to carbonate the damn thing, I have no idea how it's going to turn out. I do know the base recipe coming out of the keg was very tasty, and it tasted like champagne. So
beautiful. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, are there any other experimental brews on the horizon?
No, I really am trying to get back to basics, brewing good, clean beers. I brew an IPA occasionally, but I'm trying not to make myself get into a rut and brewing the same beer all the time. I'm trying to expand my horizons, but also come back to the basics, i.e. lagers and pilsners, and move all over the map. I like to have a great variety of beers in the house. I don't want to go, oh, what do I choose from today? The double IPA, the single IPA, or the triple IPA? It's like, no, I want some variety in the house. So
yeah,
I'll still brew wheat beers. I like having those around, and my friends like having those around. So, a lot of my friends don't drink big beers. They'll drink the blueberry beer or the pumpkin beer or the strawberry wheat beer.
Seasonals.
They're not. Yeah, seasonals. So I like to have those around too because I like to have people drinking my beer. One, because I like to see them going back to the tap one after the other, because that's a true representation of oh, I like the beer, or wow, I really like this beer. and oh, by the way, I can brew more beer, so that's the fun part.
Yeah. So you met up with how many Brewtubers? You met up with Nate. So you met up with SJ a couple times now, and then you got everybody down at SJ's.
Yep. So actually, the first Brewtuber I met up with was Hopback Nate. He's over in Rhode Island, so he's just over the border. He's actually not that far away from here, maybe an hour. So
Nice.
I'd like to get Nate back up here and brew with me as well. And we keep talking about it, but our schedules never really line up. And that was my first experience with a Brewtuber, and I was over at his family's house, and they brought back lobster, and we had lobster. I mean, they gave me lobster.
Nothing wrong with that.
You know, nothing wrong with that. So it just goes to show you they never met me before and welcomed me into their home, and it, you know, I don't know. I just think the level of trust within the Brewtuber community is pretty high too. Yeah. So the next one was SJ, and what was after that? So
Steven?
after that, it was Steven and Larmo and some other guys.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you
posting
guys.
videos.
Right. So there was you and Lermo and Steven that all hooked up, and you went to some bar. All right, and
Yeah, and there was another guy there. I can't remember his name, but he hasn't started posting videos yet. But I think he's in the neighborhood with Lermo. Yeah. So then back down to SJ's to meet SJ, Pat's Fan 1284, I think, and Rick, which is I put him down as Harry Homebrew 62, but it's Homebrew 62, not Harry Homebrew 62. I don't know why I keep doing that. Homebrew 62 was the one and only Paul with Steve, and of course SJ again. So I haven't really gotten around that much. Not like sorry, it's time to get up. I haven't gotten to see any of the West Coast folks other than who has come to see me. The plan was for me to actually fly out to the West Coast this summer, but I broke my ribs. Apologies in advance to all of those people.
So Gary, thanks a lot for joining me. I mean, it's been a fantastic time talking to you. You've contributed so much to the community. You've inspired so many people, and I just can't look forward enough to watching more.
I hope I inspired people. I don't know if I did, but I'll take your word for it.
Absolutely, absolutely. You inspired me and a whole wave of people who are with me along the way. I mean, it's just been fantastic. Brewtubers.com. I mean, it seems like an awesome opportunity for people to start contributing, getting their name out there, creating articles, maybe even posting some things to buy in the merchandise section. So yeah, there's a lot of community stuff.
Think of Brewtubers as the grassroots. It's a grassroots thing. It's not a business. It's a model to perpetuate your own agenda if you need to.
Awesome. So I look forward to seeing more of your videos in the future. Please keep us updated on how that champagne turns out, and we'll talk to you later.
All right, Tony. Thanks for the time, and keep this under an hour, will you?
Will do. See ya.